Coming up, the Brooklyn Nets handle their business against the Detroit Pistons and move one step closer to clinching the 6th seed and an NBA playoff berth.
You are Locked On Nets, your daily Brooklyn Nets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, my friends. Welcome into the Locked On Nets podcast right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team, the nearly playoff-bound Brooklyn Nets, every single day. Over there, you're going to find Doug Norrie, owner-operator of DFSR, for all your daily fantasy sports rankings from DraftKings to FanDuel. He's got you covered. I'm Adam Armbrecht, breaking down the New York Football Giants on the One Giant podcast and your New Jersey Devils on the Devils Puck Luck podcast. We thank you for making us your first listen of the day. We're free on all those great platforms. And Doug, while we will discuss Spencer Dinwiddie and Joe Harris and some of the individual plays from this Detroit Pistons victory, the biggest storyline coming out of it is the magic number for Brooklyn is now down to 1.
Yeah, that's the story here. I mean, we've been sweating out and to some degree these last few games. We knew that Brooklyn controlled their own fate when it came to securing the 6th seed. We know that's what they've wanted. We've been along, running a parallel track with, sort of our fandom around wanting them to not to roll through playing games and just get into a regular playoff series and try to play spoiler there, or at least, speed bump to somebody. And that's what we've been rooting for. And this game, we knew the game against Detroit. Look, Nets came in here minus 11.5 road favorites. Detroit's one of the worst teams in basketball. It was a game that would have frankly been devastating had the Nets lost. That was really never in doubt. And when you're going and looking at the standings here, at this point, it's pretty simple, right? It's pretty simple to break down. We'll talk about why we're rooting for Philly tomorrow, what the final 2 games look like for Brooklyn. It's looking more and more like this is a foregone conclusion, but this was the game they had to check away they had to check this one away for sure, because just the nature of the team they were playing meant that there was just simply no way they could lose this game. And they didn't, and took care of business. And now 1 game is the magic number for the Nets.
Yeah, and it's funny, too, because now when you look back at it, obviously you were in doing the post-game solo after the Minnesota loss, 107-102, a late foul on Spencer Dinwiddie. Missed call. But nevertheless, the Nets have won 4 out of their last 5 games. And you said it, the last game of the season is going to be against Philadelphia. Maybe it ultimately won't matter, and that can be an easy one or a kind of a safeguard to lock up the 6th seed if they had to. But then you also have Orlando, a team that's been playing well down the stretch of the season that is far enough removed where they seem to want to go out and win games. So a game like Detroit, who has nothing to play for and still came out and gave you a puncher's chance there, this was the one to check off. And we kind of laid this out going back a handful of games, back to what? That back-to-back against Cleveland, where it was you really wanted that second one. You lose such a close one in that game. You come out, though, you get the win against Miami. You cough one up against Orlando, and then you've effectively done what we thought they could do. Beat relatively bad teams down the stretch of the season. And you mentioned the key phrase, control your own fate. I think it would have been a little bit harder for me down the stretch of the season to look at this team and to watch these games and deal with some of the ups and downs if it was also scoreboard watching in a much more aggressive way, because the Nets had lost 4 out of their last 5 as opposed to doing what they've done, which is continue to check off those wins.
Right, yeah, they are 5-5 over their last 10. They are trying to hold off the heat. The story here with the Nets, and we'll get into some of this game with the Pistons, obviously, as well. We're going to talk, about some of the performances here, because there's definitely some to take note of. But the key here with the Nets is going into Thursday, the Heat will play the Sixers, and there's a couple good things that are working in the Nets' favor with this right now. The first is the Sixers, their playoff seeding isn't for sure set up, right? It's pretty much they're going to be the 3 seed. They probably wouldn't mind taking another game here just to lock it up. As we're recording right now, Boston is holding off Toronto. That would essentially keep the Sixers in this 3 seed. But here's the key: even if the Sixers stay in the 3 seed, for sure, 100%, they would much rather play the Nets than have the Nets drop into the play-in game. Right? Mm-hmm. They do not want, I suspect they've not come out and said this. There's no way they want to play the Heat instead of the Nets. And they can essentially ensure that happens on Thursday by just beating the Heat. So basically, because
nothing more easy than the 1-to-1 of beating the team in front of you serves the thing you want to accomplish.
Of course. And so, rather than get into a 7-game series against Miami with Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo and Hero and one of the best coaches in the game and Eric Spoelstra, right? And a team and culture that seemed to be sort of zombie when it comes to never be able to die. You can't put them away. Remember, they were a Jimmy Butler basically in and out 3-pointer from going to the finals last year, right? The team hasn't been as good this year, but it's just not a debate. You'd rather play the Nets. If you're the
DNA
Sixers,
is still there. The DNA is there for Miami.
Of course, you would much rather play the Nets. So we can go into this Thursday game knowing that the Sixers have to know that, right? They have to know we beat the Heat here, we get the Nets in the first round, and their seeding and everything is locked up, and they'll do what they can against the Nets. I think that actually plays out really well for the Nets here. There is real motivation on the part of the Sixers here to take care of business. Frankly, to also, if it really got down and dirty, to punt the final game of the year that they have to play, that they have to play against Brooklyn. So there are a lot of things that are really, really lining up in the Nets' favor. And we're going to go into Thursday. I hate to say it because it doesn't feel great, rooting for the Sixers and rooting pretty hard.
Yeah, and because I want to have this locked up. I want the Brooklyn Nets to be afforded the ability of saying, and maybe we want to just make sure everyone's healthy, right? We'll talk a little bit just to throw out something from this game. Cam Johnson had his knee knocked. He came back. He was fine. But if anybody had any concerns, right, making sure everyone's healthy, you run some guys long minutes, that would be nice. One other historical reference point that I just wanted to throw out for the Brooklyn Nets. We understand what the team accomplished before they made the big trades of Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. This team, by the way, though, is getting dangerously close to being a 500 basketball squad after the trade. So that's also maybe a minor feather in the cap of a lot of these players' minds. But this would mark, if the Brooklyn Nets make this, and it's a transitional era, obviously coming out of what it was to what it's going to be going forward. If the Nets secure this playoff spot, that'll mark the 5th consecutive season that they've made the playoffs. Now, we know they had to battle to get into the play-in game. So if you want to have that discrepancy here from Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving's era, sure. But by doing that, that's the 2nd longest consecutive playoff run in franchise history. The only other one longer than that is the 01 to 07, when they went 6 consecutive seasons, went to the finals those first 2 years, and then the Eastern Conference Finals, and slowly petered out there in the semis. So, it just, to me, whatever this team is going to look like going forward, I think this is another one of those signals from the organization of what we wanted to accomplish after trading superstars, not being willing to fully jettison every single talented player here and go full dumpster, full tank. Making the playoffs, I think, mattered. I don't know if the fan base will respond the same way, but when I saw that, I thought, yeah, this can not only be the continuation of something, it can also be the launching point for the new core of this team going forward.
I 100% agree. I actually have a couple thoughts about that, about just sort of the trajectory of the team and what you're talking about in terms of what we're rooting for. We'll get into that in a second. First, going to tell you about our friends over at Ibotta. Grocery, school shopping, getting a little something for yourself. You know you're already doing it. Why not get some cash back for it with Ibotta? Put some of that cheddar in your pocket. Watch that closet grow after purchasing all this season's latest trends. How about watching your cash back grow with each purchase with Ibotta? You can earn cash back on every shopping trip. Ibotta gives you cash back on hundreds of grocery items, from produce to personal care to pantry goods. You link your loyalty account or you upload those receipts. It's super easy. You shop after you shop and you get cash back. It couldn't be easier. The average Ibotta user earns $120 a year in real cash back. That's just cover the cost of the entire shopping trip, which is one of those. You could use the cash back to buy that flight you've been eyeing, maybe something you're dying to just get, have a little cash for. That's what Ibotta affords you. And like I said, it couldn't be easier. Right now, Ibotta is offering our listeners $5 for just trying Ibotta by using the promo code LOCKED. When you register. That's LOCK, like our podcast network. You go to the App Store or Google Play and download the free Ibotta app. Use the promo code LOCK. That's Ibotta, IBOTTA, in the Google Play or App Store, and use the code LOCK. Download Ibotta now.
Okay, so it was a 123-108 final score here over the Detroit Pistons that moves Brooklyn one step closer to securing the 6th seed. But before we dive in on some individual performances, and I think now with just 2 games to play in the season, we can start to think about what kind of skill sets can carry over into the first round playoff matchup. Historically, what were your other thoughts just around what the Brooklyn Nets are trying to accomplish here?
We won't take too long on this, but and I'm sure we're going to cover it once the Nets ultimately, knock on wood here, do just clinch the playoff spot.
Yeah.
But this is not a surprise that they wanted to do it this way, right? Like, we knew that they went into the season with a certain set of expectations. Like, it did not work out. The superstar era did not work, but we have not seen a version of the Nets that want to get down and dirty in the dumpster fire of tanking. Like, that is not, they couldn't really do it before and didn't, and they're not really set up to probably want to do it going forward too. And that's sort of just been an organizational credo for a while now, because, you mentioned those teams. It's easy to think about the superstar era as buoying those playoffs. Like, those were like D'Lo and, Jared Dudley teams, and the early Jared Allen stuff. And then the bubble, like, these were like not superstar laden teams. These were scrappy teams. So anyway, we'll talk more about it.
So it does bookend it in a lot of ways, right? Bookends it in a very similar fashion with some superstar mixed in the middle.
Right, because remember, like, just think back to like that Sixer series a couple from 4 years ago when Dudley was in Simmons's head and there was the whole thing going on, right? And like, and then the bubble year, like, there's just the vibes are totally different. Anyway, we'll get into this game, and we're going to talk more about the playoffs as we get down to it. But I didn't want us to forget that those playoff series weren't all Kevin Durant era stuff. Frankly, it was more from before. It was more from before it, right? Like, that's just kind of the way it went.
The Nets make the playoffs, and we all look back and go, Spencer Dinwiddie. He was the most critical figure in that 5-year run. But ultimately, I know. I'm saying it tongue in cheek, but we'll talk about it more when the season concludes.
He's probably going to play like the most games. I'm going to look that up real quick. So over that run, he probably will be the most Nets games. Anyway, we'll look this up. Let's get into the game.
Yeah, but so inside of this game itself, it's funny. So Mikal Bridges, the Nets put up a 47 spot in the first quarter. Mikal Bridges actually has an off night. Still the best in plus 25 on the night. Still a 26-point performance. He started the game 5 of 14. He still ends up finishing 10 of 26. He kind of did some of those little things that a fringe superstar kind of player needs to do. Get into the mid-range game late and help bury a team. But for me, and this isn't, I'm not shocking anybody, I mentioned Spencer Dinwiddie, and you also have to throw in Joe Harris here. When you play a bad team like Detroit, listen, we can talk about wanting to give up less points to Detroit, especially in the first quarter of this game. But you have Spencer Dinwiddie, who whatever we thought he was or wasn't, gosh darn it, man, 10 assists in the first quarter of this game, only the third player in Nets franchise history to do that. And he continued to find the guy that he mentioned in his reintroductory press conference, Joe Harris. Like, he was like, great to see some familiar faces. I want to stay out of the way of certain guys. I want to feed Joe. He fed Joe. Joe has been so much more of the player that he once was since the trades, because he's being asked to only do the thing that we know he's so good at, and that's knock down triples.
Yeah, look, it's really funny how this game ended up working out across the stat line for these three guys, specifically the three guys you mentioned in Bridges, Dinwiddie, and Harris, because each one did one thing really well, and it was the one thing the other guys didn't do at all. Right? So like, if you look at the way this broke down, Bridges has 26 points. It was something of a struggle for him in the field, and he went 2 for 11 from 3. So he's like not really knocking down triples, agreed with the mid-range, and did hit some shots late. Dinwiddie couldn't hit anything, 1 for 10 from the field, but has 16 assists because the court vision continues to be very, very high level, and they're just needing so much out of him in terms of on-ball creation, and he's really taken up the mantle here. Yeah, at times it looks like he's going to dribble the air out of the ball, but I think that's part of the plan. Like, that is part of sort of what they need to have happen. And then you have Joe Harris, who dusts the cobwebs off here, and all of a sudden just goes completely flamethrower for that first half. 6 for 9 from 3. Only took one more 3 for the rest of the game. Found that a little bit weird, but whatever.
This first quarter alone, 6 of 8 from beyond the arc in the first quarter, 18 points. Didn't put in a bucket the rest of the way.
Yeah, just like an insane line. So it's just funny how these three guys staggered their lines to just sort of each one pop off in one particular area. I mean, I'm just going to call Mikal's like from like just overall shot attempts and then scoring. But it ends up becoming a sum of the parts, because the sort of the rounded team approach to this game, this in some way through these three guys, and if we extend it out to some of these other guys, and then this ended up being sort of a team game. It was not looking like it was going to be the case like that, But when you get to the very end of it in the aggregate, this game looks pretty even for like everybody across the board in terms of contribution.
Yeah, and you can even throw in with Bridges and Dinwiddie combined for 8 of 9, 4 of 5 for Bridges, 4 of 4 from the free throw line for Spencer Dinwiddie. Not the same volume, even getting to the line the way that we've seen them do in the past. But I think you're right, and you can even extend it out. I said 10 first quarter assists for Spencer Dinwiddie, finished the game with 16, 6 assists for Mikal Bridges. So, I think sometimes if we want to just highlight him specifically here as to what you want your best player to do when the shooting touch isn't quite there, well, don't totally force the issue, right? You could easily turn around. Still took 26 shots, by far the most shots on the team tonight. And if not for those 6 assists, you could say, boy, it looked like he was really pressing, right? Offensively, looking for his shot with consistency. But there were stretches of this game where you weren't thinking about him and whether or not he was going to get his looks. You were just seeing it in the natural flow. And I think we've said this consistently since this new iteration of the team has come together. They do not have the clear-cut electric number one superstar. So there should be portions of the game where Mikal Bridges is heard as feed from Mikal on the open 3, or a cutting Nic Claxton, who we'll talk about in the closing segment as well, right? Like, you want to hear a lot of these guys get mentioned in a lot of different phases. Otherwise, it's probably more likely that the team is behind, the team is losing, and they're not playing team basketball, which is as critical to anyone for the Brooklyn Nets right now.
I think it's sort of a testament to how this game went that I've actually just realized that there was no way I would have guessed 26 shot attempts was what Bridges had in this game. Like, go ahead.
And it's a good note. No, it's just a good note that he started 5 of 14. So he took another, 12 shots across the remainder of it. But that 5 of 14, that was done and said, midway through the second quarter, probably, as somewhere around there. So that's probably to your point. It's like, he takes like a full quarter from the end of the second quarter into the third of just saying, dude, I got to take my hands off this ball a little bit here before I end up dragging us down probably. So I think it's just good self-awareness in that regard.
Yeah, like I said, in the normal flow of the game, it did not feel like that he was outpacing teammates by more than double shot attempts, right?
Yeah.
Because like the next high, and we'll get into some of these other guys here in a second. I have a cool Dinwiddie stat here also. But like, if you were watching this game without having the scoreboard turned on, or box score watching this at all, there's no way you'd be. I don't think. I mean, this is how my reaction was. Like, he had 26 shots. The next closest guy had 10 shots. So he was like 1.6 times more than the next closest guy. And really only 2 guys had double-digit shots. He took all the shots, but it never felt like that in the flow of the game, I don't think. Like, to me watching, does that make sense?
Yeah, no, 100%. You'd have to combine 3 other players on this team to equal or surpass Mikal Bridges' shots. Combine any 2 that you want. The top 2 would be Royce O'Neal and Spencer Dinwiddie. 20 shots, right? No, there was no point where it felt like it was being dominated by him. And that can also go into the fact that Spencer Dinwiddie is on the ball and he's searching for his shots. Yeah. And even frankly, in that regard, I'll say that, Spencer Dinwiddie, 10 shots, he goes 1 of 10. It's a bad shooting performance, obviously. But also, I look at that and go, you know what? That's a guy, like, he has to take at least 10 shots in the game. There's no one else to take them, right? So at some point, it's also a credit to him. It's a credit to the team overall. And we'll get into it here in a second, why you're able to have essentially bad shooting performances from your top 2 players since the trades went down and still come out with a fairly comfortable victory over Detroit.
For sure. And have a couple cool Spencer Dinwiddie stats here as well. We'll get into those in a second. First, going to tell you about our friends over in FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are almost here. It's the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. I'm over on FanDuel right now. There's a couple things I'm really liking looking at right now. First of all, Sixers -5 over the Heat tomorrow. We're going to take that because we feel very motivated. We feel very motivated about the Sixers' motivation. -5 feels like they're going to want to get the job done. I already like the way that looks. Also, what you're going to do, it's a little too early for this one now, but we know we're going to get some work in on the same game parlay. That's what FanDuel puts together. That's where you pile a bunch of different bets together in that same game. And it's going to make it easy for you because new customers on FanDuel are going to get a no sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back. If your first bet doesn't win, just download the FanDuel Sports app. It's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Like I said, you put together that same game parlay. Maybe you want to just do a super long shot on the plus 40,000 or whatever on the Nets to win the championship, something like that. You put $1 in, maybe buy that Honda Civic you've been always wanted. That's the kind of thing that you can do over on FanDuel. Download the FanDuel Sportsbook app, grab those that no sweat first bet up to $1,000 when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook betting partner of the NBA.
Okay, so before we tap into your stats from Spencer Dinwiddie, other key contributors in this game, you jogged my memory there. Doug and I did put in a bet at the start of this season that was going to land us a couple of Honda Civics, and guys, bad news. We're not going to get there. We're not going to get there.
Well, here's the mistake we made. We actually, none of it's going to get there, but we actually were like, if it all comes together, Ben Simmons could lead the league in assists. This is a perfect segue into my Spencer Dinwiddie stat, by the way. He could lead the league in assists because it's all coming together. He's just dropping dimes to Katie and Kyrie all day. Okay, obviously that didn't get there. The problem is we picked the wrong net when it came to actually who could lead the league in assists. Spencer's not going to do it, but over the last 15 games, he leads the NBA in assists.
He's an animal.
10.7. Okay, Halliburton and Clarkson are technically ahead of him, but they've played like 4 games total, so that I'm not even counting them. Dinwiddie's 10.7 assists. The next closest is James Harden right behind him. Old friend James Harden, 10.6. And then there's just like a massive drop off. Like it's basically him and Harden's missed games too. Like Dinwiddie's kind of like running away with the assist lead over the last month of basketball. It's really insane. Like it's just like a totally different part of his game. And I don't know, we're going to get into some of these other guys, but it's almost underreported how many assists this guy has over the last basically the last month.
If they were a team in the post-trade iteration that were perceived to be any level of threat, even just to make it out of the first round, I'm not talking about a real playoff threat. If they were perceived to be a threat to, let's assume it's the 3-6 against Philly. If they were a threat to them, to actually bounce them, I think this entire stretch for Spencer Dinwiddie would be getting covered on ESPN and every major outlet with consistency, because you'd be talking about a point guard, and by the way, a non-traditional, player playing in the point guard role, legitimately leading the NBA and helping his team make the playoffs. But I think because Kevin Durant's gone, because Kyrie Irving is gone, it's like, next year, the next couple seasons, we'll tap back in and see what's going on with Brooklyn. I really, it's probably a disservice, just a great NBA narrative from that standpoint, selfishly. But name a time when a player leads the league for as long a stretch that Spencer Dinwiddie has, and it's not being talked about at all.
Yeah, it's just like the nature of like the way sort of the cycle works. I mean, we've talked about it a bunch. Throwing out some tweets there that have had like a good engagement on this. Like, I think Nets fans get it, but it is just really like, again, 16 assists. There would have been a time where 16 assists would have led the show, right? Like, would have been like, oh my God, anybody on the Nets had 16 assists. That would have been where we started. It's a testament to how well he's played and like what he's done with his team, that it's like, we're like, hey, 20 minutes in, we'll mention it. It's not a knock against him. It's like, we're not burying it on him. It's just, he's been doing it so consistently here that it's just not like necessarily a new thing. Right. And that's actually the story. Because if you 16 this game, 6 last game, 12, 11, 5, 9, 12, 11, 11, 7, 11, 16. Like, these are insane numbers. These are elite offensive creation numbers when it comes to the assists. So didn't think we were going to keep going with Dinwiddie here, but really can't say enough about how well he's played.
And we're going to tap back into this specific conversation in the offseason once we get through the playoffs and everything, because then there's real questions about who's valuable to this team and what are the roles going forward. Inside of this game, though, just so we round out the conversation on how the Brooklyn Nets got across the line here, there was a couple of key contributors. Nic Claxton, I want to get to his game, but I'm just going to give the big tip of the cap to Royce O'Neal, who, guess what, is in the starting lineup. Now, that is going to be because DFS was unavailable for this one, but we talked about this going back the last 2 weeks, effectively saying he's played so consistently, it just feels like the smart move to get him into the starting lineup. As often is the case with Brooklyn Nets, sometimes it's a product of error that ends up leading to the right solution. He goes 5 of 10, 4 of 9 from deep, gave you 15 points, plus 19. That is the second highest in the plus minus behind only Mikal Bridges, 7 rebounds. And guess what? Talk about another guy that in a lot of other iterations, we'd be having the discussion much earlier in the show. He had 8 assists.
Yeah.
We don't even talk about the dude that has been thrust into this, talk about pseudo point guard roles. He was playing a small ball 5 at one point in the course of this season. Now he's being called in to be the backup point guard and is doing it at an incredibly high level.
Royce O'Neal should win like teammate of the year. I'm being serious. Like this guy, think about this guy's season. He gets traded here to the Nets. They play him completely out of position for like part of the year because they basically don't have a 2 guard that can guard anybody, right? Because like Simmons is out of the lineup. He plays sort of out of position. Then they trade they trade a bunch of great superstars away, and then he goes to the bench. Like he starts the whole season, and then he goes to no complaints, no nothing, just goes out there, does what he's going to need to do. And then obviously it was kind of obvious that he would start this game once you knew Dorian Finney-Smith was going to be out. It's a logical sort of one-to-one just pivot there. But I mean, he leads the Nets in minutes this season, and he's going to end up finishing the season easily leading the minutes. So him and Claxton have 20. He has 2,300, and then Claxton has 2,200, and then no one else is above 1,500. So like he's going to lead the Nets in minutes by a ton. His role has changed consistently over the season. He's basically the backup point guard. He was starter, and now he goes to the bench. You really can't say enough about him. And again, it's one of these things we don't even talk about it because he doesn't make a big deal about it, and he just goes out and keeps playing, right? Like we could have been this could have been a story. It's not a story. It's like the guy's just a gamer, and you just feel very confident when he's in the game that it's just going to be like a high level. Like he's just like there's going to be a high level production here. He's a plus 19 in this one. Hit a bunch of important threes. I just can't say enough. I'm dripping with compliments here for some of these guys because I do think it's very impressive. And like I said before, I think we kind of don't talk about it enough, like how impressive just what these guys have done both on the court and just like sort of mentally as well.
Yeah, I'll ring the bell one more time about off-season conversations because we had this discussion as well. I did the solo episode saying, hey, what do certain players need to showcase or what can they prove down the stretch of this season? Royce O'Neal was one of those candidates. He's showing you just the insanely high level of value that he can have for a team in spite of the fact that he originally was traded for a first-round pick in order to bring in a player to support 2 superstars. And now he somehow has managed to roll himself into someone that could be just as valuable, if not maybe more so, for this new iteration of this team. Tip of the hat, obviously, to Nic Claxton, 8 and 9. You know what I really liked, actually? And this is a compliment to Nic Claxton, but it's also going to come in route by complimenting everybody else on the team. Because everyone, all of a sudden, Spencer Dinwiddie's finding him. Mikal Bridges is finding him. Cam Johnson is finding him. Royce O'Neal is finding him. And I think it's a testament not only to the chemistry that's being developed now with this team, but that Nic Claxton's game is improving. Now, let's be clear. There were several instances against the Pistons where all Claxton was doing, if you're on YouTube, was making a up gesture as he was standing relatively unguarded around the basket. But I think that we've seen now for Claxton, he understands what area to lean into when. And I think that that's important because there's big stretches of games where, guess what? If you're out there running and spacing and giving the old up sign, it means you're going to get a lot of easy oops. You're going to be throwing them down. You're going to be flexing your muscles. Sometimes he has to turn and face up and go at the basket, which he did. Finish with the left hand on a floater. So, the stat lines for him, I think, are very repeatable, and it's easy to gloss over those as well. But the 7 total rebounds, a couple of assists, couple of steals, 3 blocks. It's just the evolution for him has been great. 19 points in this one. He continues to evolve his game this season. It's been phenomenal to watch.
He had a couple of just like highlight blocks in this one too.
Yeah.
Just sort of embarrassing the other guys. They went ultra big here with the Pistons with Duren and Wiseman there. That's not a totally easy assignment. Those guys are very raw, but they're at least very athletic, right? And Claxton is just like, this is a good matchup for him because like the guards are a little out of control. The bigs aren't totally polished, right? And like that's going to be a place where he can look really, really good. Again, just the compliment train rolls on here with these guys. It's been a very, very good season for him. Oh, by the way, did you say this? Sorry, I was writing something really fast. He went 3 for 3 from the line too in this game too.
Oh, but you know what it was? It was the comedic contrast of Day'Ron Sharpe, who's been pretty consistent at the line, goes 2 of 6, and then Claxton turns it around 3 of 3. That really was the complete front to back, defense to offense, complete stat line game for Claxton that's reflected on the impact he had as well.
Yeah, so it's just been, this was a game, look, it's against Detroit. It's easy to pile up the compliments against the Pistons, but the W's are W's, games are games. That's why you play them. And the Nets went out and did what they did. And across the board, you have to be really happy with the performances. All right, we're going to stick around. Oh, go ahead. And then I'll close this out here.
Just the last note that I want to make here, the footnote on Spencer Dinwiddie's performances, top 25 all time in Nets franchise history. He's knocking on the door. 16 assists puts him just outside of the Jason Kidds of the world. And yes, Jason Kidd is on this list about 15 or 16 of the top 25 times. But that's the kind of performance that he's having as a facilitator in a franchise that has had one of the all-time best table setters in NBA history.
All right, we are going to close it out. We'll stick around here in YouTube, see a bunch of folks over in YouTube. If you have a question, throw it with @LockedOnNets. We'll try to bring some of them up there. If you're listening on the podcast, I don't know what to tell you. I've told you this a million times. You got to get over to YouTube. We're coming live after every game. Some chance we do something following the Sixers game. If the Nets if they close it out tomorrow night, Adam and I can discuss that. But either way, you're only going to know that we're going live on YouTube if you subscribe to YouTube. So make sure you subscribe to Locked On Nets YouTube as we climb towards 6,000 subscribers.
Philly, listen to this for tomorrow and then ignore it going forward. You're not going to die. You just need to fight. Fight for your life. That's Rocky Balboa.
One of the all-time great American poets. We will be back again tomorrow talking more Brooklyn Nets basketball.
Post-podcast, I didn't have a mini stroke. It's just the B got caught right on the front end of my lips there, and I had to just fire off Rocky.
Oh, I thought you were just. I know sometimes you purposely say the names wrong. I thought that's what you were.
I was trying to do it, but something got. So it all worked out in the end, friends. The bottom line is, hopefully Philly heeds those words for one game, and then immediately starts dumpstering themselves when it comes to playing us in the playoffs.
I had Locked On Nets. I had a question here that.
Yeah,
this cracked me up. This question cracked me up here. I starred one of these. The table. I'll put this up there. Not trying to be negative after a win, but is it unfair for the people on the team who have to play minutes with Seth Curry? This had me dying. It's brutal. It's brutal. I don't know what to say about him. It's a shame. I don't know if he's hurt. I don't know. He's looked like a little slow the whole season. I don't know if the injury just like he never like fully recovered or what it is. Thank God. And they split up. I went crazy about these Harris Curry minutes the other night. I spent way too much time just going nuts about this like 4 or 5 minute stretch that they played together because the minutes are so terrible when they're together. Yeah. It's embarrassing that for one like that they did it. They didn't do it tonight, but it was kind of only because Cam Johnson tweaked the knee, so they had to bring in Harris early, and then he went flamethrower. They've been wanting to play these guys together. Curry's been terrible. I don't know what he brings at this point, like why you would play him. And so I just thought the phrasing of this was so funny about it's unfair to the other guys that have to play with them. Anyway,
four guys standing on the court.
So nice job, Hayblood. It takes a lot to make me laugh sometimes, but this definitely got me.
Seth Curry at the scorer's table checking in, 4 players on the court just hang their heads.
He just
except for the one guy that's checking out. He
can't make threes. He can't be getting anyone off the dribble. Other teams, their eyes get as big as saucers when they get him in a switch because they can just completely destroy him. Like it's just the minutes need to go. Anybody else, honestly, Cam, Edmund Sumner, who thankfully played a bunch tonight. Like literally anybody else.
And it'll be very interesting to see, man. What happens is the 2 games and then the playoffs. Again, Joe Harris is not the perfect player in so many different ways, but he's found a way to have a role for this team and not step out on the court and go, good Lord, like what are we going to see here? Seth Curry, man, I'd say it's been 85% bad performances with an occasional, upside effort. And frankly, it's just more than anything, it's that you see how glaring it is. He's not functional on defense, which is a problem. And then
that's an understatement. Go ahead. Sorry.
I know. I know. And I'm being generous, but frankly, Seth Curry, I'm not trying to dump on the guy, but Seth Curry defensively makes Joe Harris look competent defensively. Like that's totally. Which, you know what I mean? Like, and that's just size alone for Joe is more than enough, but that's where he is right now. So I'm really, you talk about things I'll be frustrated by. If Seth Curry steps on the court in the playoff series, there will be a post-game blood boiling podcast for yours truly.
They can't do it. They can't do it. There's no way. It'll be so obvious that they're just. We can see where the minutes are going here. 8 minutes tonight. It looked as bad as can be
up there. Yeah,
the Sumner minutes ended up looking fine. Like again, I'm of the anybody else category here. Yep. Like literally anybody else. Like David Duke, at least he's faster. He can't shoot, but whatever. I'm not really probably being serious there. But let me roll through a couple of these ones because there's we got a few other questions here. good way to get on the podcast is to compliment somebody. So there you go, Claude. Appreciate your perspective on this game. Claude, longtime listener, longtime commenter, longtime Adam appreciator. So there you go.
We have our times, man. Claude and I, we have our good conversations. We have our bad conversations, but when I get his support, I always love it.
I do. I know we spent so many things saying nice things about Spencer. So feel okay bringing this one up here.
Yep.
It's like, hey, I'm going to say 10 nice things, and then I'm going to allow to say one negative thing. And that's going to be the way we need to equal this out mentally. But Dinwiddie is terrible with this. Like, this is a very good call by Jean Remy here. Like, he complains all the time. I don't know if it rubbed off from Luka or whatever, or like their time together made it so like the feeling is you have to just complain about the refs every single thing that ever happens. Dinwiddie is awful with this. He does have legitimate gripes at times, but it's just every freaking play. Every play he's mad about not getting a call. And this is correct. He does do this. Like, he does not get back. Like, if he is mad about something, he does not play transition defense.
Does he complain more than the average NBA player? Yes. Does every NBA player complain? Yes, but he is far more egregious. But you can complain all you want as long as you're running back defensively. You can be pissed off and frustrated by it, because this is not a team that can function with 4/5 of a defense because you're frustrated. And you're right. Listen, he gets fouled. I get it. And to me, his biggest gripe, I think, is about the fact that he is better than the NBA is willing to acknowledge, right? He doesn't get treated like a superstar. He's not a superstar, but he's something better than the way he's regarded. And I think that lives in him on every single foul. But the not getting back on defense it's inexcusable. And I guarantee you, same thing with the Seth Curry one, there will be a moment in a post-game podcast in the playoffs when I come on and say, hey, critical juncture here. If Spencer Dinwiddie ends up complaining about a foul that he feels like he deserves and cost them, 2 points, whatever, transition buckets, because those effectively go from being an opportunity to score on the offensive end. That's a 3, 5, 6 point swing over 1 or 2 possessions. And he had them on multiple back-to-back possessions in tonight's game.
Yeah, it's like my least favorite thing in basketball is to watch the complaining. I just there's certain players that do it way more than others, for sure. And Spencer, unfortunately, is one of those guys. And look, that's the only kind of knock I could take on here. Let me throw this one up. Should we play Moses? I keep seeing people just begging for Moses Brown to get minutes. I'm not exactly sure where that comes from. Like he's big, I guess. I don't know. It doesn't seem like the Nets have needed this. Eating up fouls, I suppose, but I just don't know. I think sometimes with people with Nets fans and centers, it's just like this weird relationship that has been going on for years and years now. It's like desperately wanting some of these guys. He's not going to play. Like, the guy's not going to touch the court in the playoffs. So
here's the couple of things. The one thing is, tip of the cap to Day'Ron Sharpe, 12 minutes, 4 of 6. Like, he continues to be doing the things that you want him to do, and he's doing consistently. He's disruptive. He bounces around, gets his hands on some loose balls. Like, it's important. He plays pretty well. He had a couple of nice offensive swat backs, and then he's not going to see the court as much late because they're always going to go in another direction with Nic Claxton and others. But somebody mentioned this last week. That last week when Moses Brown was signed, it was finally a guy over 7 foot. You got to play him. And I went and crunched the numbers on it. It was like there's 25 or 26 guys in the league that are 7 foot or taller, and over half of them are scrubs. So like, the height thing is not the prerequisite for getting minutes in the NBA. I actually like having him on the roster. I'd like him to be on the team in the offseason and see if you can develop, because he's a young player. But just because you're big, it doesn't mean that you automatically go in. And even eating fouls. We saw this with Day'Ron. It wasn't good early in his career. Eating fouls is bad. It slows down the game. It gives away free points. And then it just puts you in a bad spot where you were maybe being dependent on a player for X amount of minutes. And now all of a sudden you get 4 and he's on the bench.
Yeah, it's just been, we've been a while without it. So it's been kind of nice, because I felt like there was times over the last year where this was like literally every single day with the stuff with the centers.
There's a build up here about the bigs.
Yeah. You're catching me at the wrong time with this. That's basically it. It's like not so much. I feel bad if I went off about this particular question. This is a lifetime achievement award on the center, on the center position.
Yes.
That's sort of where I land. This is a funny quote I thought here from Luke. Spence's parents are college professors. Or were you amazed that he loves to argue? That makes sense.
Yeah, I like that.
I get it. He's competitive. These guys are competitive. I do think I always try to hold that close around like the competitive. The thing that makes you good is competitiveness, and you don't to not be competitive means to typically not be very good, right?
Mhm.
Like that's like you need to be really competitive to compete at these levels, especially if like athletically you're not as good as the superstars. And that's not a knock on Spencer Dinwiddie. He's just not, right? Like this guy wasn't a high pedigree dude. Like he was basically jettisoned by the Pistons as like a throwaway. The Nets built him up
to Chicago, who then cut him. He got through 2 teams in order before he got to Brooklyn.
Dude's an incredible worker. He's had an unbelievable career based on where he started. And I think that it's, one begets the other. The competitiveness is what makes you outkick your coverage in terms of like what people thought you were going to be early in your career. So I get that they're all kind of lodged together. It's just, I just wish that 15% fewer complaints, I think would be okay with me.
What was the other one? I'm going to say to you, I'm not even going to bring it up here. Remy, though, we'll address that in the offseason. I mean, he's asking about, power forward.
I can't.
That's like, we just, I'm too dialed in, man. I'm dialed in about debating, Doug, about whether or not the Brooklyn Nets can steal 1 game, 2 games off the 76ers in the first round. That's where all my attention
2 games you're asking to steal off the Sixers.
I said I'm around debating the conversation. I didn't set my standards yet. I did
talk
talk to Peter Bukowski, though.
4 games. If they kept it close for 4 games, I would consider that a win. That's not me being pessimistic. Like it's just like that.
One. I think they won. Yeah.
I think there's like you said where they shoot the lights out. Sixers are good.
100%. Yeah. I think it's like we'll talk about this more, but it's like you come out and like tonight, right? You come out and you're shooting the lights out from certain players like Joe Harris. And also Spencer Dinwiddie is on his offensive game, and so is McHale, and you're able to lock in defensively, and you get a game. And then to your point, it's like keep a couple more close ones, and there's going to be a blowout in there, of course. But listen, man, I got those old bubble vibes. I got pre-superstar era vibes right now, which incidentally they did get swept by the 76ers, I think, the last time
in the bubble. No, that was
the pre-bubble. The last iteration of this team was. I think was it
I thought they took a game from Philly. I thought they took a game from Philly in that.
Go back and check that. There you go. See, so Spencer Dinwiddie's back. Take a game again.
They won the first game of that series. Right. I knew they'd taken a game. Yeah, they won the first game and then they got annihilated.
And they played that series. I remember though they won that first game. They got swept the next 4. But they got blown out in the 1, and it came down to the wire in 2 more of those games. Like there was a world where that's a 6-game series. There's a world where that could have gone longer. And that's all. I just want that kind of picture to get painted for the first 2 or 3 games of the playoff series for them.
Yeah, that was a good Sixers team too. I mean, that team was almost a Kawhi. I guess that wasn't the winning shot, but like the Kawhi, that was the Kawhi year that he hit the buzzer beater against the Sixers, and Kawhi, the Raptors won the championship that year. But the Sixers played that Toronto team. That was not the. People often think that was the Eastern Conference Finals. It wasn't. There was one more series for the Raptors after that. It was just like that game. That series was just absolutely awesome. That series.
It felt like that was the team that was good. The winner of that series was going to the finals.
It felt like
you gloss over the ECF.
Yeah, it felt like it. So anyway, that Sixers team was really good. Anyway, we're getting a little far afield now.
Scroll through for any other questions, but I will say that's one of the first times that we maybe like in this podcast history that we've really like gone off on a little bit of like playoff basketball, man. Remember, that time kind of thing. That might be something we do a little bit in the off season of like, cause there are some like really fun games and like Doug, doing with DFSR, it's like, there are big stretches where you have the full spectrum of NBA action that went on in the playoffs. So I think we can actually have some.
I also remember that series because that year I watched part of that Toronto run in a bar in Mexico and almost got robbed. So maybe I'll tell that story.
See, good times.
That's the other reason. I can remember watching Lowry doing something with Toronto, and I was at the same time almost getting robbed. So maybe that would be another.
Take the wallet. I'm trying to make sure. I'm trying to see what happens here.
Yeah, I had to call my wife and said, if you don't hear from me in 10 minutes, something really went wrong. I'm coming home now, but I think I'm about to get robbed. So anyway, hey, go Raptors. That was go
Raptors. Go Raptors. Anyway, I think we're probably all good here unless you see something else, man. Like you said, tomorrow night, if it is a loss for Miami and they wrap it up, maybe we'll just come on and do a 10-minute live little bonus thing, something along those lines, because it'll be fun just to celebrate that. And we'll talk a little bit about what the Brooklyn Nets accomplished by getting that 6 seed. We'll go a little bit deeper on that. And then the nice thing about it will be the second that they lock it up, Doug, we'll also get to do something else that over 82 games you don't get to do a lot of. And that's get more like matchup based about where can the Nets maybe have some success? What needs to go well for them against the 76ers potentially if they want to steal a game or two off of them in that round?
All right, like I said, programming notes. We'll see how it goes here with Sixers Heat tomorrow on Thursday night. Either way, we'll have a podcast. We'll have a podcast out for Friday, so we'll still give the landscape of what's going on. And I think that we can probably lock in that no matter what will come. If they lock it up Thursday, we can probably do something live. If they don't, we'll try to maybe come at you after Friday after the Magic game too. So we'll kind of see how the landscape of this sort of shakes out. But it's looking like that's how things are going to go. In the meantime,
Dallas down 11 at the break.
What's that?
Dallas is down 11 at the break to the Kings.
No, Dallas is. I think you're a little behind here. Dallas is actually winning in the fourth quarter, 96-9. They're going back and forth. Old friend Kyrie. They're trying to claw their way so they can lose in the first playing game. So that'll be fun. That'll be fun to watch. There's some crazy stuff happening in Dallas, man. That thing is gone. It's not actually. It's crazy too. It's like not even Kyrie's fault. This one, like this one feels like everything else has gone wrong. Like Cuban had some bananas quotes about Jalen Brunson. It feels like the train is completely derailed and is headed for the cliff now. Like it is. There's some nuts stuff happening, and it's actually hilarious too because we'll get out of here. But like usually, among a certain group of people, the temptation here would be like, well, this is what happens when you get Kyrie. He's actually been like fine. Like he's been.
I was going to say, this is the old. You know what? This is where Mark Cuban is playing 3-dimensional chess. He goes, no, give me Kyrie because I know we're headed for a cliff. But if he's on the train, guaranteed the blowback does not land as directly as it could anywhere else that it might on him.
Cuban had a crazy, hilarious quote where he was like, the Jalen Brunson negotiations were going great until his dad got involved. You're like, you're going to blame his dad? Like, is that the way to go? Like, it's his dad. Like, that's just, yeah, I don't know. Maybe a guy's dad has an opinion. Like,
Fathers, am I right?
What an insane way to go.
You blew it. You could have given him the money. You didn't. You blew it.
Okay, fine. You blew it. But who are you bringing over to your side by blaming the guy's dad, who's like an assistant coach and like is really well respected? It's crazy. Anyway, not Kyrie's fault.
The old spectrum of NBA. Yeah,
we'll get out of here. Appreciate everyone that stayed here in the chat as we just went a little off the rails ourselves here. We will be back again tomorrow talking more Brooklyn Nets basketball.